being called. Isn't that fabulous, Vani? So which is I'm going to begin with you, Vani. Right. At the same time, Mr. Nagarajan is an IAS officer. He's from the government of India. Who allowed him here? I'm sorry. I spent the last 20 minutes making sure that he doesn't get offended by anything I say, because this is also the first time I'm meeting here. And some fascinating, insightful thing there. So it's not about the newspaper headlines with Startup India, etc. There's some real work that is happening here. And Mr. Nagarajan, we are very informal here, as you can see from this audience. And we want you to criticize primarily the people on the stage, secondarily just everybody else. As in, we want to make this world a better place, and unless we ask the right questions. We all know Tarun Davda. Tarun, my questions to you are going to revolve around everything, of course. But since you are an entrepreneur, when he was an entrepreneur, I assume you would curse and abuse venture capitalists. Now you are a venture capitalist, so you still do. You know what is interesting is when I interview a panel of venture capitalists and say, these are investors, many of them turned around, like Ronnie Screwvala did last week, and said, no, I'm here as an entrepreneur. Even VCs don't want to call themselves VCs sometimes. Right? And of course, Ganesh is one of those people who, if he puts like his hand on your head, in the classic Indian blessing style, you become a successful entrepreneur. So try to get that done before this session is over, right? Vani, I'm going to just...
Does it work for venture capitalists also? So
You don't need that.
Well, with venture capitalists, you got to pay money to get that done. So there it is like, blessings as a service. You heard of SaaS, PaaS, this is BaaS. Blessings as a service. Vani, I'm going to begin with you, and frankly, so I'm not going through introductions, some of that has happened. I'm not going one person at a time. I love people to contradict each other because it presents the audience with two sides of the same coin. But those of us who have been in the startup ecosystem, whether at the seed stage, which is more or less where I operate, and somewhat more advanced stage, which is where you operate, often we wake up, read a news online or in the paper and say, shucks man, not again. As in, I wish this were better in India. Like, a primary gripe that we have. What would that be for you? What do you wish was better in India in the space you operate in?
wrong news reported all the time. We have invested in companies we don't know that we read in the paper. Our companies have been sold without our knowledge that we have invested in. Okay, so it's almost like I know nothing about what's going on around me, which usually I don't also. But it would be good if and on a serious note, though, what happens is it's very misleading because now you read that news and most of the news is really off, and then next thing I show up in the office, somebody says, but you invested in that company 10 million, which maybe we didn't, and or they go to somebody else. And so the news is so pumped up about everybody is having a good time, and it's so easy to get money, and so easy to get these wonderful valuations, and people read that every day long and assume that it is just like that, and it isn't.
Right. In fact, I don't know if there's a specific example you can give, but I think 3 days ago I was reading about a news that Food Panda is trying to sell itself and not being able to do that even at $10 million. This is Food Panda India, and I don't know what the truth is, but frankly it sounds bizarre and stupid to me that there could be such a news. I might be wrong, as in does Food Panda deserve a valuation of sub 10 million for an exit? I do not know, but I agree with you. But the good side about that is there are a lot of these guys you see here have got a greater interest in entrepreneurship arising from the buzz, however inaccurate that buzz might be. I'm going to jump across to you, either Tarun or Ganesh. Probably Ganesh, you can jump in here. When a lot of these people are beginning, how many of you are like either beginning stage entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs, so that the people know? Okay, so that's like a little more than 50% of this room. Who are the rest of you? And what are you doing here? They're all venture capitalists. Right. Okay, how many of you are like successful entrepreneurs? You define it yourself. How many of you are like successful entrepreneurs? Okay, congratulations to the 3 of you who say that, because I didn't know that creature existed, to be honest. But so, one of the problems that I have, especially since, by the way, I was employed with IIT Bombay till March of last year also, is that my fear is that a lot of fundamental motivations with which people start out are a little unfortunate. And you meet them and they're enthusiastic about it, but you're like, come on now, this cannot be the reason you want to get into entrepreneurship. And when you start at a wrong seed, you end up in the wrong direction. So any, words of advice or observations, Ganesh, you can tell this audience about, the motivations which they come, or the realism around those?
Yeah, so I started multiple ventures, greenfield ventures, and sold them, and doing many more now. See, ideas are plenty, Okay, and ideation is very sexy and glamorous. You sit and you think about $1 billion of valuation, you think about how to scale, you think about role models, all that is very nice. But actually when you come on to the ground, entrepreneurship is brutal and extremely hard. Okay, right? It's really, really tough. Statistically, it will be stupid for you to become an entrepreneur, okay, right? Because less than 5% of the startups actually monetize, less than 10% actually are successful, 90% shut down. So it's statistically, you have to be really stupid to start a business, okay, right? Entrepreneur is brutally hard. So be very clear what is your motivation. To Ajeet's point, people say that I want to become an entrepreneur because I want to get rich. No, that's complete BS. If you want to get rich, join a big corporate job up from IIT, okay, right? Join Google or join something like that. That's really rich. People do get rich. A small fraction of the people get rich. Be clear. That can't be the motivation. People say that I want work-life balance. Come on. You can't get work-life balance in entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is about 24 hours job. People say I want to be my own boss. You are not your own boss in entrepreneurship. You are everything from P to P, peon to president. Okay, right? So that's what entrepreneurship is about. You have to do. Who is the boss ultimately? It's the customer is the boss. Whenever customer calls, you have to pick up the phone because he determines your fate. So you can't be your own boss. If you want to be your own boss, best is to be in a corporate job. Okay, right? Why? In a corporate job, you have fixed hours, you have nice weekends, the meter is ticking. If there is a band or a holiday, you still are getting your salary. Whereas when you're an entrepreneur, whenever there is a band or holiday, my heart aches. Okay, right? Because the money is not coming in, but the salaries are getting paid. So I think the motivations of trying to be rich, trying to be your own boss, trying to have better work-life balance, all of them are wrong. So if you are clear about it, okay, right, then it's fine. It is a great quote. It's not my quote, okay, right? But I don't know who quoted it. It says, I never told you entrepreneurship will be easy, but only that it will be worth it. Okay, only that it will be worth it. Okay, right? So that I think is really that really I think defines why you have to be stupid enough to pursue less than 5% chances of success. You really have to be sadomasochistic to be able to inflict this on yourself. Okay, right?
Good news is that everybody on the stage is pretty sadomasochistic in the way he described it. So we are doing okay on that front. Tarun, I'm going to come to you in a moment, but I'll begin with Mr. Nagarajan. So, I probably don't even need to ask you the question. It's obvious. What are you doing here as a government? What do you see your role? What is your experience around it and words of advice?
First of all, I'm here in my personal capacity. So that's a standard disclaimer. Apart from that, I see the entrepreneurship as a growth engine for the country. And I see no reason why the rest of the country should be left out. Here we are talking about the missing bits of the entrepreneurship. I would say the cake itself is missing. You are only talking about the icing so far. So last week, Davos, there was a discussion about creating 75 million entrepreneurs all over the world. And even if you want to target 1% of it, that is 7.5 lakh entrepreneurs. We have 600 districts in the country, multiply by 1,000. In every district is 6 lakh and 1.5 lakh. I give it to the metros and some of what's already happening here. That means there needs to be an entrepreneurship ecosystem in every district, and we need to be targeting 1,000 entrepreneurs. And another quote I frequently get to hear is that out of a population of 100%, the entrepreneurship is only 1% who really do the entrepreneurship in the real sense and bring out with something worthwhile. So that means this 7.5 lakh people can create job opportunities for the 75 million people. So that potential is not there. So I just saw that almost every hand was going. Again, I will ask, how many of you are entrepreneurs here? No, this time it's getting low.
Now you're scaring them. See, we are in an academic institute.
No, I am just asking, yeah. We have a fun fact that is to be explored here. So now I will ask again, how many of you are doing entrepreneurship here or want to do, aspiring? And how many of you are working or intend to work on issues that concern the bottom of the pyramid? Good, much bigger than what I expected. The perspective I want to bring here is that there is a discovery problem. The entrepreneurship wants a market, wants a segment that is clear that where he can focus his effort on. And the bottom of the pyramid, you can sort of say it is a rural population. They want some messiah who can actually solve their problems. In terms of, I'm not even talking about the basic things which the government is also trying to do, but in terms of what the rest of the country is getting. Even in a country like USA, you have fiber to the home and all that. Just go outside 100 miles, go to a Red Indian community, and things are not very different. At least we are much more, I feel we are better, more inclusive as a society when you really compare, go into the details. So what we are looking at is only the outside part, and never underestimate the rural market potential.
Mr. Nagarajan, give me a second, sorry. So let me just, talk about one of the things you're saying, because we're going to go short on time. The way you are defining entrepreneurship is not necessarily in the Silicon Valley model of entrepreneurship / venture capital model of entrepreneurship. Yes. So we are talking of slightly different entrepreneurships, which is great, which is one of the things that we want to bring out here. So tell me, when you look at the capitalistic pigs around you, and I'm clearly not referring to the people on the stage, quite obviously, right? What bugs you? As in, what do you say, why can't these people do this instead? What is that?
I feel there is a same discovery problem. They don't know there are problems worth finding a solution here. Ultimately, if you define, like you have taken out all the other definitions that are generally going on the paper and in the magazines, and all the myths you have broken, then what is really entrepreneurship? Entrepreneurship is about solving a problem. That is sort of being an engineer. You can be a society engineer for the society and also making an impact. Everything else is a byproduct. And if you're not working at the bottom of the pyramid, what bloody impact are you going to make? I don't understand.
So that is a line for Twitter. Please, everybody tweet, what bloody difference are you making? And the hashtag is eSummit16.
The other thing is that I have firsthand seen that the rural market, if you want to see it as a market, it is a big market. It is out there to be discovered if you bring the right service. When you talk about you start a venture, then we do user persona, and then we pivot. What is the meaning of pivot? That means you change your ultimate goal of your organization to suit the market. You are not exploring the market and you say, I don't see a market. That is one thing. Other is, it is a harvesting area for the entrepreneurship wave. The people who are having the opportunity here may be the first wave, but we need to have hundreds of waves. I'm talking about next 5 years.
You know what we're going to do at the end of this session? You and I are going to arm wrestle to settle this once and for all. But I'm going to move to Tarun Davda at this point.
Thank
Tarun, I'm going to try to talk to the audience in a very different sense. You guys, you have tried or heard about trying to raise money from VCs, right? They're really bad people, isn't that the case? Right? They're not going to even say yes because they hope to earn money from you.
Look like a bad person.
Yeah. So what is wrong with VCs? As in, why are they the monsters that they are? Why can't they be helpful to entrepreneurs?
Okay, I'll come to that question. I want to just take off from what Mr. Nagarajan said. I think you asked a question which is what are the missing bits in the panel, what are the missing bits in the ecosystem? I think to me it comes down to 3 words: lack of imagination.
Lack of imagination.
I think as investors, frankly, I think some of my panelists will agree, there is a herd mentality when it comes to investing. We had the wave of e-commerce, we had the wave of cabs, we had the wave of food tech, we had the wave of logistics, we had a wave of hotel aggregators. I think there is a herd mentality when it comes to investing, and frankly, we all suffer from it. So I'm not trying to exonerate myself from it. Same thing goes to entrepreneurship. The minute you hear about one company getting funded in a particular space, there are 25 people who want to do exactly the same thing, right? And I think that, to me, is at the root cause of what's wrong with the system today. It is something that is a big part of why, and then there is a lot of frustration. Why am I not getting funded? I'm doing what he's doing better than how he's doing it, stuff like that. Right? So I think if everyone tries, and it comes back again to Ganesh's point, is what is your starting point? Why did you decide to start a company? Goes back to his point. What problem are you solving? Are you passionate about that problem? Do you feel that problem? Do you feel passionate about solving it, whether or not anyone else joins you in their journey? Whether investors back you, whether people back you, it comes down. If you are trying, I have met so many different people who trying to raise money because isme abhi funding mil raha hai. You will never be able to build a successful company with that, right? So I think that's the more macro point. Now, why, coming back to sort of your question, why are investors? I think we need to understand that investors, we have a job to do towards our investors. There is a particular return expectation that our investors expect out of us. Hence, we are looking at funding a very small sliver of companies that fit that model, right? And I think this is a discussion I was having with Vani outside. We have the unenviable job of saying no 99.9% of the times. It sounds very glamorous. It isn't. It's not fun to meet young, very smart kids who have dreamy-eyed. They come and talk to you. They pitch their business plans with a lot of promise, and you're saying no 99% of the times, right? And you're not saying no 99% of the times because you don't believe in the person or you don't believe in the business. You just don't believe it fits your model of what will get you the return that's required.
I've got to agree with you on that, but I also think that it is not only that.
Yeah.
Sure, you have a certain sweet spot / mandate / covenant which you are fulfilling, but the other bit also happens. As in I'll just give you an example. 24 months ago, if somebody said hyper-local business, we would not balk, right? But 3-6 months ago, if somebody came to us with hyper, as in we wouldn't even let them complete the word, as in like bus ho gaya, right?
Correct.
So there is something fundamentally wrong also with this, right?
That's what I'm saying. There is a herd mentality across the ecosystem.
Right.
Whether it's investors, whether it's angel investors, whether it's VCs, whether it's entrepreneurs, there is a lack of imagination.
I'm going to be the devil's advocate, which means not the advocate of the VCs because clearly they are not devils. But I sometimes feel that when I attend talks like this, I'm not talking of panel discussions, most speakers say, don't start up copycat businesses.
Yeah.
Don't mimic what has worked in the blah, 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 right? We have heard that all the time. And then you look at all the success stories in India and barring, let us say, free charge as an example, almost all of them are fairly good replicas of something that happened before elsewhere. So who is the hypocrite here? The entrepreneurs who copy it or the
So
VCs
let's
who fund
argue
it?
that. Let's talk about Redbus. Okay.
Redbus also. Okay, no, I agree. So
Let's
Redbus.
talk about Ola. Let's talk about Ola, right? Everyone thinks it's a copy of Uber. I'll tell you the real Ola story. When we funded Ola, 2-3 years ago, when we started diligencing Ola, okay, and he's an IIT Bombay entrepreneur, so a lot of people here would know that story. When Bhavi started Ola, he did not know what Uber is. He did not know Uber existed. It was two brilliant entrepreneurs in two different parts of the world taking a look at an industry that's completely broken and saying, okay, you know what? There is a mobile phone that's going to change the way this industry operates.
Cool.
Right? Uber started very differently. There was an existing cab infrastructure in the US, which he started aggregating. Ola was very different. India doesn't have cabs other than Bombay, which has 50,000 black and yellow cabs. There's no cabs. It was a supply creation opportunity. Now, is Ola a copy of Uber? Well, today it does look like that way. Are they the same business? Yes. But were they fundamentally different businesses when they started? Of course they are. So I think you need to peel the onion a little bit more and then say, okay, is this a copycat business?
Okay, I buy that.
Also, don't start a business because a venture capital is going to fund it or not fund it. Why are you putting the venture capital at such a big center of your life? Don't, make getting funding or not getting funding in a short amount of time the definition of your life's, benchmark of success or not. Businesses that you create must have enough elasticity that it's not so dependent on venture capital money. That's very, very important.
Right. In fact, if you think about all the businesses you passed by today to reach this venue, be it shopkeepers, be it transporters, be it professionals, be it whatever, almost none of them have been funded. And the ones who have been funded have predominantly borrowed money. It is a negligible proportion of people who sell their equity. However, like Vani's first comment today, there's a lot of media-created movement. So media doesn't talk of, 4 chartered accountants have set up a practice outside IIT Powai. There's nothing to talk about it, and clearly that would be really boring news to read, right? But when two kids do something fascinating and put a wristband around it and say we'll be the next billion-dollar organization, it probably is driven by that, so you've got to be smart enough. Tarun says you've got to be intelligent enough to take care of that. Ganesh, I actually would like to, hassle our friend Nagarajan a little bit, okay? Though he's not here in his official capacity, he's clearly not the government of India. Having put those disclaimers so you don't have to say them again, we say things like in China, entrepreneurship has thrived driven by the government. In the US, it has thrived because the government kind of stays away. In India, we kind of say, despite the government. Now, I know these are like kind of cliched, right? And then we have things happening, but surely there could be a better entrepreneurial environment, right? So any thoughts around what you wish happened and how we could have been the Israel-like startup nation or a little more capitalistically oriented like US?
Which has been very clearly articulated, the kind of glitzy show that was put up, the kind of people, all of them are extremely positive ways of doing it. I'm coming from a situation where there is completely only license Raj, and every time we used to get a government person talking to us as an entrepreneur, when I used to get a government call, somebody calls from the government or visits from the government, I used to start getting nervous, okay, right? Because that's not a good news, okay, right? It's like It's like 20 years back, if you're talking to a policeman, it's a problem, okay, right? It's not a good news. From that situation to today, where entrepreneurship, government recognizes entrepreneurship, whether it is some funding, whether it is credit guarantee, whether it is actually having Prime Minister on stage and young entrepreneurs on stage. It was unheard of. Earlier, the only people who used to share were bureaucrats or heads of state, or sometimes maybe CEO of Google or Microsoft. From that situation, having entrepreneurship centers, I think it's a very, very positive stuff. Okay, right? That's so the noises, the intent, the objective, even some of the packaging. The document was also nice. It didn't look like a Sarkari document if you have seen the Startup India document. It's a nice document that will put out. All of this is extremely positive. So I don't want, with that caveat, coming to the question of what I think they should do. One, I think they should just make it easy for people to do business, not interfere. Some of the things I don't agree with it. Things like we don't need incentives. Entrepreneurs do not need incentives. Right? They don't need it from government. All that we want is we want them to stay away. Okay, right? Make it simple. Don't make it necessary for me to go to Singapore to list, to Singapore to change the domain. All of that reforms in terms of simplicity. Some of it has started, a lot more needs to be done. There are a lot of areas not be done. For example, bankruptcy code in order to actually help in winding up company. That is good intent. But most of the times in startups, we don't do bankruptcy in that way. What we end up doing, we end up merging the company, we end up acquiring, we end up doing that. That, for example, has huge problems. How do you do fair market valuation? How do you value the IP? If there is a foreign investor involved, then the IP has to be valued. Now, there is no concept of fair market valuation for this. So just completely do away with it. That is one example. You have been active in angel zone. We had this problem in the earlier government when they had put angel tax. Okay, right? Now, again, that still has not got solved. If I raise money from friends and family, not from an angel investor, not from an accredited angel investor, if the company raises money, it's still taxable if it's beyond fair market value. In this policy, they have extended it to incubators. Okay, right? But that still has to be registered incubator. But what about if I raise money from you, if I raise money from my uncle or from somebody else, or I want to put money in some startup, it will get taxed. So just do away with it. The intent is there. They came 90%. In many of these cases, last 10% they withdrew and it has not got the impact. Or for that matter, the definition of a startup for availing tax benefits. You have to apply, an interministerial board will actually clear. I just can't imagine that my startups in Bangalore, 15 of them will apply to interministerial board and all that. So I think in terms of idea is good, thought is good, objective is good, implementation, in many of the cases we have come 90%, last 10% needs to be done. Last point from my side, I really don't think we require more capital from the government. The 10,000 crore they're talking about, 2,500 crore per year. If they can focus on what Mr. Nagarajan said, bottom of the pyramid, tier 2, tier 3 kind of thing, okay, right? Then it will have a desired impact because there are pockets where angel funding or VC funding, because of the box in which the VCs work and the sliver they look at, are not reaching it. Whether it's impact ventures, bottom of the pyramid ventures, tier 2, tier 3 ventures, which are not traditionally tech VC fundable. If the money goes there, it's useful. Otherwise, I think you're just putting money where there are enough matrices and Kalaris of the world with enough capital available. We don't need this. So fundamentally focus on making it simple, removing the hassles, don't need incentives.
Nagarajan, having confessed that we are all nervous with your presence, okay, so are we talking of you staying out of the way, or do you have a role as an enabler to do things that we refuse to do? How do you see yourself?
Yeah, I have to thank Ganesh for accepting that we have come 90% at least, which is quite big an achievement so far. There are 3 things that I would like to highlight. First of all, we have an entrepreneur as a prime minister. So that is the first thing. Second is that you have second thing is that we have people like our DIPP secretary, Mr. Amitabh Kant, leading more like an entrepreneur and change maker rather than as a bureaucrat. He's not typical. And there are more people like me following his footsteps and becoming what I call growpreneurs. We work within the government but think like entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs in the sense of impact and problem solving, not in the other model sense we are discussing. So anyway, this is all going to, it's good that because the initial boosting has to be done through these kind of mechanisms, but there will be a time where we'll be looking at what we are really doing. The third point is that we don't really need a Israel type ecosystem. We don't need a UK type ecosystem. What we will be creating is a Indian type ecosystem, because ours is unique. We represent a big market. We represent the biggest working population which is coming up. We are going to beat US in the number of internet users. Mobile is changing everything. In my district, we have given family health workers and Anganwadi workers with mobile tabs, and the child's height and weight is being measured in a mobile tab and coming to the district authorities. And every government department is getting fully working in the mode of government process restructuring rather than just delivering a project. So it's all happening inside. Only thing is that it will come out after it gains a critical mass, and we are rightly on that direction. And I think it's going to merge, and since we are all on the same side of the table now, things should be working much better, and the signs are very positive.
You know, I must say that when we think of the government, we don't hear this. So please give him a very big hand. So we totally love what you're saying. Okay, we totally love what we are saying, and we hope to sprout many more Nagarajans in this country. Let's put it that way, right?
They're already.
Sure. It's just that, like once again, the media talks about a very selective part of, the government as everything else. I just have like time for two more questions. I'm going to throw one at Tarun, one at Vani. Tarun, I'm still not happy with your previous answer, and what do I do? Right? So I'm going to wait till I get my answer.
Yeah. What answer do you want?
No. I'll tell you what question I want you to answer rather than what answer I want. Given that you have been an investor, a VC for a shorter period, I assume, than the time you spent as an entrepreneur, we did not we talked about government, we talked about entrepreneurs, etc. We have not yet talked about what VCs do wrong and what you wish they were doing right. So that's going to be my question to you. Subsequent to that, Vani, I will be coming to you because this was labeled Vani's panel discussion, right? So I will give you the
I
closing.
think you just made that up.
Okay, please pass this sheet of paper to her so she can read it written right there, right? Okay, this paper was passed to me in my previous panel and says next is Vani's PD, right? So what can I do? But so I'll be coming to you with, the final words of advice for this audience, because at the end of every PD, there should be something where they leave saying, you know what, this is something that I'm going to think about much more. So before that, Tarun,
So what do VCs
very
do wrong?
specifically,
Yeah.
what do VCs do wrong? What do they need to do better?
Yeah. I think it's a very long list. You want to extend the panel by half an hour?
No, we will list to what you do wrong in that case.
Okay. So, so you want a personal list of
He
mistakes?
does nothing wrong. Look at his track record, okay?
No.
Go ahead, please.
You haven't heard the other names, right? So I'll tell you what we do wrong. I think there's a bunch of stuff that we do wrong. I think we are guilty of the herd mentality as much as people write about us. I think that's the first one. I think we give very poor advice. Unfortunately, a lot of VCs, especially in India, given the ecosystem is so new, have not built businesses. And hence, there is a more theoretical approach to our advice rather than a more practical approach. And I think a lot of us are guilty of that. I'm guilty of that in many cases. I think, I don't know, and somebody had actually, there was this article I had read which some US investor said that most VCs on boards destroy company value at every board meeting. So I think the best entrepreneurs have a very high bar of listening, and that's what we like to see. We don't like entrepreneurs who listen to everything we say. We like to be challenged. We like to be, have a good quality argument on our advice. We overfund companies. We fund companies too early. There's no company that, there's again another saying that I really love, which is companies don't die of starvation, they die of indigestion. So we give companies too much money too early, and they start doing all sorts of stupid things with that. And I think there's enough examples. I don't want to get into specific names. I think we are accused of being fair weather friends. I think we are that. So when you take money from VCs, remember that VCs are fair weather friends. When things are going well, they'll be your cheerleaders. When things are not going so well, they'll forget about you and move on to the next company. You want more?
I think that I would thank you before moving to Vani for the closing remarks. There's this one thing that he said which struck a chord with me about advice. Because when you go to investors, and I'll say this for angel investors, because I have a little more exposure there, we often pretend and hypocritically say that it's not just dumb capital. When you come to me, not just will you get money, but we will also give you good advice. I wrote an article which got very popular. It was reprinted by the London Business School Review, coincidentally, where one of the points I said was that though angels say they will bring value, eventually you see that they only bring nuisance value. right? And this is where, right when I was introducing Ganesh, right at the beginning, I said, when he blesses you, good things happen. This is where I think that there are some people, such as Ganesh, who stand out, who truly bring value to the startups that they, incubate / angel invest or otherwise advise. Vani, I have got my note saying, flights have to be caught and sessions have to be done. So closing remarks, something that, they can take home from this session.
I think we have made this all about the venture capitalists. Really, I think it's all about the entrepreneurs. And what I would say is, we make this a very emotional relationship. It really is not. Building a business is emotional. When you're taking money, it is transactional. So this question of your fair weather friends, you're this, you're that. Look, so many entrepreneurs sign contracts, and then no VC can operate outside of that contract. And then you say, when the contract has to be executed on some way, on something that happened, all of this comes out, right? So these are contracts, these are legal contracts. So what I would suggest is that it's really important that you have a strong conviction about your business. Don't put the venture capitalist as the reason for your success or your failure. Whoever says when an entrepreneur succeeds, the venture capitalist is responsible for it. And likewise, when you don't quite get to where you need to in this particular idea or in this particular business, really have a courage of conviction, be a good listener, and believe in yourself. And don't make venture capitalists so important. So
fantastic. Thank you. So I've been, so I think that, if you really listen to some of what was said, because a lot was said, I think there is some learnings here, right? What we're going to do is, I've been told to take 2 questions and move on to the next panel. And I'm not going to select who is going to, because there's so many hands going up. So just, the person with the mic can run to anybody whose hand is raised. Okay, before you ask something for the panelists, the audience predominantly is not students from IIT.
we know.
Yeah, you know that, right? Because sometimes we assume that we are in IIT, so we are talking to IITians only. Yes.
Sir, as a student, what I perceive is the missing bits in startup ecosystem is the entrepreneurial mindset. We are how we are raised. From the childhood only, our parents say, you study, get a good job. So how to change that?
Change your parents, get better parents. Both my sons would want to do that. As in, my son wanted to attend this session. He has a 10th standard board exam coming up. I said, come tomorrow. Day 1, don't come. So I know exactly what you're saying. But that is a comment. I'm not taking that as a question really. I do agree that the way we are brought up has a lot to do with what we see here. Thank you, thank you. Next time you are the panelist. Okay, yeah. Cool. So I'll still quickly take 2 questions and we'll be done. Run to whoever they run to. I know there are so many questions to be asked, right?
I would just like to add to Nagarajan sir's this one. I have a question for him. I want to be a social entrepreneur, but what happens is most of the people, if I go for funding, most of the people won't be funding for tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Why is that procedure in VCs?
He wants to do what you say, but is unhappy that Vani doesn't give him money to do that.
Yeah.
That's what I said, there is a discovery problem. The venture capitalist model doesn't see a persona there. There is a market segment which has a paying capacity or that. So it is important to build up the initial proof that the product or service you are going to give is actually solving the problem and people are willing to pay. That is one thing. The other is there are other investors who have social goals as their thing. And if your product is related to what government is doing, you can try with the local offices, and if your product is innovative, then you will surely get some implementation and pilot so that it adds credibility to your product, and then you scale. So I agree that there is a discovery problem, but you need to work more on it to bring your business case and make it proved on the field by getting actual revenue generated.
If you are really encouraged by what he says, Naga, naga@gov.in. Sorry, I just disclosed your email address in public, but that is really his email address. I'm not kidding. If you really have the passion, I'm sure he wants to hear more from you. Last question of the day, and then we all rush out. See, this is one of the reasons you should sit in front rows. The mic never reaches the back.
Hello. So my question is related to that question, but I want to pick from the fact that VCs do wrong, the fact that they invest too early. So if this is the case for we are talking about social entrepreneurs, yeah? I think, and you know about the pioneer gap. In fact, that's the problem. There's no sector to invest in the people who want to work for the bottom of the pyramid when they are pioneers. I do agree that you need to kind of show some traction, right, before you invest. But even when I show traction, I'm experimenting. So essentially, there's no one who can allow me to experiment, like fund me to experiment like 2 years, to figure out a model that works, how to solve education in India, learning outcome problems in India. It's not like a quick problem.
Cool.
Right?
I think
so. The question is, how does VCs encourage social entrepreneurs to pioneer, essentially?
Does anybody want to take that?
Why should VCs be the ones that you're looking to solve that problem? That's the first question. Like, you said VCs have a very narrow sliver of what they're doing, what they're focused on. And so I continue to wonder why we put VCs at the center stage so much.
Just pass the mic to him.
See, I think VCs also is a broad category. There are tech VCs, there are Series A VCs. Like Tarun mentioned, they have gone, like you are trying to raise money, they have gone and raised money with a theme and a thesis. So trying to go with your thesis to somebody who is not the right fit, it just will not work. But for both the questions, there are specific social funds which are focused on social sector. They have raised money only for social sector. If I were to go to them saying that I want to do big basket or I want to do hyper local delivery, I want to do fresh menu, they will not touch me. Okay, right? Because they are not supposed to touch me. They are supposed to give only for your sector. Plus, hopefully this 10,000 crores, 2,500 crores per year fund of funds where they are putting, they will put lot more of that money into those social enterprise funds so that people like you are able to get that particular money. So don't look at them. They are not for you. Okay, right? They are for a particular this one. But there are enough people, but more needs to be done. It will come. There are grants, there are other things that may come up, but I don't know too much about it.
So, here's the thing. When we started, the organizers told us end between 2:15 and 2:20. The time is 2:17. It's important to stick to time. I have to not just thank the panelists because they have done a great job. I think as an audience also, you were fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, panelists. We have a small token of appreciation for all our speakers. Like, Ajeet, if you can just do the honors. Give a round of applause, huge round of applause. Wasn't it a wonderful discussion? I hope you have taken all your notes.
Vani, thanks. Tarun. Ganesh.
And now it's time for you, Ajeet.
Hey, thank you.
Okay, a round of applause for
So, I think everybody on stage is fairly active in communication. Follow them on LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. You can keep the communication going. Thank you.
Yes, and the Twitter hashtag ESL Summit 16.